Guys, it's Jackie. Today I wanted to talk about how I passed the JLPT N3. This was my second time taking it, and I had failed the first time but passed the second time. So I wanted to, update on what worked for me the second time versus the first time. So the main textbook I used is this one, Tobira. It's not a JLPT book, but it is an intermediate Japanese book, which is, I feel, what the JLPT N3 is. So it's not JLPT specific, unlike some other resources, but it has everything in here that you need. It has different grammar point. Let me see if I can get an example. It has really interesting cultural things about Japan, and it has a little comic that you had to read through, an article about a robot. It just has a bunch of different interesting topics. And then after you read through the topic, it'll give you the same thing as other textbooks, but a grammar point and some vocab associated with the passage and kanji. So it's a little bit like the Genki books, but way more in depth and with more reading. So it is definitely harder than the Genki books. Let's see, I'm trying to find you an example. It has a dialogue. Again, kind of like, ooh, I don't even know if you can see that. It has a dialogue. So this book was very helpful for me. It is hard. It took me, I think, a few months to get through the whole book. But there was definitely a lot of grammar and vocab in here that I didn't know previously, and I didn't realize that I was missing. So if you're trying to bridge the gap between, upper, beginner, and then intermediate, or I would say middle intermediate, then this is a good book if you are into textbooks and you prefer learning this way. Another thing that I use for vocab all the time, I mentioned this in a previous video of how I learned Japanese, but is Memrise, the app. I use that for vocabulary. That one you can do for or by a JLPT level. So whatever level that you want to take, you can type that in, look it up. That really worked for me. I think my problem the first time with the test, that wasn't this time, was that the first time I actually studied vocab too much and ignored other things that I should have been focusing on more. But vocab is important, so make sure that you do study it a little bit every day. But besides apps, I noticed that you can also learn new vocab just from anything Japanese that you like I mentioned before, like songs, anime, movies. If a word jumps out at you, you can add that to your vocabulary. Look it up in an app or write it down. Let's see, I have notes here, that's why I keep looking over here. YouTube actually helped me a lot this time around for various reasons. The first one being just practice listening, or JLPT specific listening practice. That's I would type in JLPT N3, and it would have this long, I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it was at least 45-minute, I think, listening section, and it was set up just like the test. So it would give you, a man and a woman talking, and then it would ask you questions about the conversation, and it was multiple choice questions. But that I feel like helped me so much more this time around, was having some actual practice with the test. Even just for sitting and listening for long periods of time. I think that was also what messed me up the first time around, was I just got exhausted just listening. So just having consistent practice of, okay, I have to sit here and listen to this for 45 minutes, and I'm not allowed to get up until it's done, just like what would happen in the test. And then for me, I would have a notebook in front of me, so then I would write everything down, and then I would notice which ones I didn't get right, and then I would go back and listen and see why I didn't get it right, and make notes accordingly. YouTube was also helpful for me, just finding Japanese YouTubers that I like, that have nothing to do with education or teaching you Japanese, just regular Japanese channels, like what you would listen to in English or find in English, just things that you like. And then, you know, a lot of the time, sometimes they have English subtitles, but a lot of the ones that I found, they don't. So you really have to listen. And this personally for me, I feel like really helped get me to the next level with just listening to Japanese people talk naturally and without it being in like an educational, you know, situation or format, just normal speech. I think helped my listening practice or my listening comprehension improve a lot. Let's see. What was my other tip? Oh, either Japanese movies on Netflix or wherever you watch movies. For me, I did watch the Japanese show Terrace House, and I forget now the name of the other one, but it was a name, or it was about a man, he lived with a bunch of women. Oh, Million Yen Woman. That one's more of like a thriller type thing, like there's murder and stuff like that, but like, so whatever you like in Japanese, switch the subtitles to Japanese instead of English. Now, you don't have to do this that long if you don't want to, but for me, I think it really helped a lot because then you're also getting reading practice by reading the Japanese subtitles. And then, you know, if there's something you don't recognize, you can look it up because you can read it too. So I think that helped a lot as well. I really enjoy watching Japanese TV now without the English subtitles. Sometimes if I'm feeling lazy, I do still, you know, use them. But for improvement, I think finding any show that you can get into and trying as hard as you can to follow the Japanese subtitles instead of the English subtitles if they're an option, I personally found very helpful for advancing further. Let's see. And what was the last thing I had to talk about? Oh, the news. Now the news is difficult. Like they use difficult speech or more formal speech sometimes, but I have found like there are easier websites, but I've just typed in like news in Japanese on YouTube and just seeing what's going on in Japan on any given day. I find that, you know, this isn't as interesting. It's not, or to me it's not. I don't find the news very interesting, but it's definitely helpful, again, for just listening to what's going on. But again, don't expect yourself to understand everything, or in any of these situations actually, in either TV or the news or anything, don't expect yourself to be able to understand everything at this level. That's not going to happen. Like, my listening comprehension has improved so much, and there's so much, like, I don't need that much help with subtitles now, but there are still, you know, words and grammar structures that I'm not familiar with, and, you know, it is a process and it takes time. So if there's still times where I'll hear a sentence and I almost don't understand anything, which can be frustrating because I'm like, what? After 6 years, what? You know, but it happens. That's kind of the frustrating thing about the intermediate level is, you know, sometimes you're like, wow, I know so much. And then there's other days where you're like, I don't know anything, you know? But